1.4, perpendicular through a point. In this video, we are going to construct a line perpendicular to line A that also goes through a specific point, in this case, point B. So when you're asked to make a perpendicular line through a specific point, it's not just like creating a perpendicular bisector, because it doesn't necessarily mean that this point B that we want to go through is necessarily exactly in the middle of the line segment that you're given, in this case, line segment A. So we have to be a little creative in making this process, because we want to make sure that it is in fact perpendicular, meaning that it does form a 90-degree angle. And using a perpendicular bisector, that meant we were going to split that line in half, creating a midpoint. But again, we don't necessarily know that B is in the middle of the line. So in order to do this, we're going to start off by taking our compass, right? And we are going to create an arc from the point that we are using. So in this case, point B. So I'm going to put the pointer on B. Now, when I do this, I want to create an arc that goes through the circle. I'm sorry, through the line segment. So if I was to just kind of turn this on its side for a second, you'll understand what I mean. It means I need to make an arc that's big enough to go through the line. So I need to stretch this past the line, right? Anywhere past the line, when I draw my arc, right, and I go left and right, I'm going to intersect this line twice. The closer I am to the line, the smaller that's going to be. But it doesn't matter as long as you are below the line in this case, or past the line if it's not necessarily below it. I will create an arc that goes into two places on that line. So I'm going to draw once to the right, once to the left, and as you can see, I've now created an arc that intersects line A in 2 points. So I'm going to draw in the points there on this line segment. All right. So if I use them, and let's call this, for argument's sake, let's say this is C and D. All right. So now points C and D, because we created that from B, that means that the distance from B to C and B to D are congruent. They are equal in length. All right. So therefore, if we just think of this line segment now as just being line segment CD and ignore everything on the outside for a second, if you were to create a perpendicular bisector here of this line segment CD, then B is in fact in the middle of that line segment, right? So if we create a perpendicular bisector, it will go through the middle of CD, and B will be on that line, right? Whoops, need to fix that there. So this allows us to now create not just a perpendicular line, but a perpendicular line that goes exactly through the point B like it was asked. All right, so again, taking my compass, I'm now going to put the pointer on one endpoint of my arc, in this case, point C. Again, as long as I go more than halfway, all right, I'll be able to get two intersecting arcs. So I'm going to make an arc above and below. Like I said earlier, you don't necessarily need to make the entire arc from C on both tops and bottoms. You can just do the parts above and below, like so. But again, you need to show those construction marks in order to get full credit. So taking your straight edge, all right, we're going to line up those two intersection points, like so. And when I draw my line segment, oops, there we go. Again, we want to be as accurate as possible. When I draw my line segment, I guess that dotted line was not the best choice. Here we go. So now when we draw our perpendicular bisector of CD, it now, as you can see, runs right through point B. So we now have a perpendicular line, meaning it forms a right angle with line A, and it runs directly through point B as asked. All right. So this is how we create a perpendicular line through a point. All right. Take this opportunity to pause the video and try this in your notes. So sometimes the point that we're asked to construct a perpendicular line through, it may not necessarily be just randomly floating above or below the line. In this example, the point that we're asked to draw this perpendicular line through is in fact on the line segment itself. Pretty much though, that doesn't change the process, right? But we basically need to just, again, create a line segment that we can work with where B is in fact the midpoint of my line segment. All right. So to do that, again, you're just going to take your compass. All right. We're going to put the pointer on B or whatever point you want it to go through. We're going to extend it some distance. Now, again, the distance here is arbitrary. It depends on, how big or small you want to make it, because it is exactly, B will be the midpoint no matter where I make it, because I'm going to make it on both sides. So if I make an arc on this side and then I spin around and make an arc on the other side, again, since I didn't change the width of my compass when I did that, this point here and this point here are the same distance away from point B. So let's call this X, let's call this Y. Now we have that XB and BY are the same distance in length. Therefore, B is in fact a midpoint of this new formed line segment. So once I have that, then it's just back to that perpendicular bisector process. So I'm going to put the pointer on this first point that I called X. Again, as long as I'm more than halfway, so as long as I'm past B, it will be okay. I'm going to make an arc above. I'm going to make an arc below. I'm going to flip, again, without changing the size of my compass. I'm going to flip it to be on point Y, making an arc above, and then making an arc below. Once again, as you can see, I have now created two intersecting arcs. If I take my straight edge and connect those two intersection points, all right, we get a line segment that runs straight through B and goes through those two intersection marks. Once again, I now know that this is a right angle because I made a perpendicular bisector of XY. So I now have that line segment, the newly formed line segment, being perpendicular to line A and running through point B as previously asked. So again, this is just an alternate version of the same process as we did earlier, except in this case, the point is actually on the line segment and not floating above or below it like in the previous example. So take this opportunity to pause the video and try this on your own in your notes.